Welcome back to our One Wild and Precious Lives and Our Dogs. Today, I'll be talking to the one and only Leslie McDevitt, the creator of the Control Unleashed philosophy, which I'm a huge fan of. I recently finished my Control Unleashed instructor certification. And of course, being me, I had to take this opportunity to invite Leslie onto the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here, Leslie, especially because we'll be talking about a slightly different topic than our listeners may expect. Control Unleashed for Humans. Welcome to the podcast, Leslie. Would you mind introducing yourself, your pronouns, and your human and non-human family?
Sure. Thank you, Chrissy. I'm really happy to be here with you. So my name's Leslie. My pronouns are she, her. I have two kids. They're human kids. They're 10 years old, both. I have a variety of animal family, dogs, cats, bunnies, ducks, and a horse. And I've written several books and spoken a lot about my method, Control Unleashed. So I like to work with dogs whose brains remind me of my own. So I work with dogs that are hypervigilant, have a lot of anxiety, and I've created a program that helps them function in the world in social contexts that are not going to be easy for them without support. So the program that's what it does. And I've worked with pet dogs, police dogs, performance dogs, any kind of dog that you can think of, because the program teaches you to that you can relax and feel safe in a variety of environments. So I get a lot of working dogs in very difficult environments. It's been really nice. I've met lots of different people that way and worked with dogs all over the world. That's what I do.
If I remember correctly, you originally created the program because you were feeling you yourself could use something like that.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Like I got started with this on this path. I was in grad school for creative writing and I was going to write fiction. I ended up writing nonfiction. Yeah, I got started on the path because I got some rescue dogs and I was in grad school that had various traumas and things. I just really identified with what they were going through and became pretty obsessed about figuring it out for them. And then along the way, also with various therapy and biofeedback and stuff I was doing, like it all gets blended together. So.
Yeah, I remember rereading your first book. No, probably the second, the puppy program one.
Mm-hmm.
Many years ago, I had just gotten a new puppy. I had just moved. I had a new job, and it just all felt overwhelming. I remember distinctly reading this and thinking, "Oh, my puppy doesn't need that right now, but I do."
That's funny.
And then I got permission to bring my dog to work. But of course, with her being a puppy, that meant I needed to make sure that she peed first. And I needed to make sure that she got to run around a little bit so she'd be able to sleep through an hour of class. So I used to live in Vienna back then, and I took the subway to get to work.
Oh, wow.
And you can take dogs in public transportation in Vienna. But of course, it was rush hour when I was traveling there. So stressful on all kinds of levels. And for me personally, what's stressful for me is when I get myself into a situation where there are too many things going on and I know I need to get them all done and in the right order.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like it's going to be a close call. As long as I have time and no deadlines, I'm perfectly fine. But give me close deadlines and many things that have to be done in a certain order, in a certain way, and really quickly. And I just,
Mm-hmm.
So what I did is I thought about targets and how you use, for example, different mats as targets to help a dog move through a space, or different pattern games. where the dog just follows a familiar pattern in a potentially new environment to get from A to B and still feel like they're in a safe space. So I kind of did that for myself. When I was walking to the subway station, I would tell myself, well, you don't have to think about all the other things you need to do today. You only need to get to the subway station. So that's not that far. It's like a 15-minute walk. That's totally doable. And then on the way there, I would pick out visual targets like you get to the lamppost, you get to the zebra crossing, you get to the traffic lights, you get to the escalator that goes down into the subway station. That way, I made it all the way to the classroom, for example. And then the first part of the day was already over, and I was in teaching mode and doing my thing there. Reading your books really also helped me structure those work days for myself and my puppy in a way that kept her feeling safe and me feeling safe. For example, it makes me like it that puppy was doing really well and she got to sit on my lap on the subway ride, but it was all still new and potentially overwhelming. So I didn't want people. That was a standard poodle puppy, very fluffy, very cute and white. Everyone wanted to touch her. And the subway is really crowded at rush hour. And I wanted her to learn that you can just hang out on my lap. Nothing's going to happen. Nobody's going to touch you. So I just built or thought of my own structures of how to make that happen and of knowing in advance what would I do if someone approached and how would I stop them, and just having that plan in advance and having my strategies and knowing that I would be able to implement them made me feel at ease, and that again made my puppy feel at ease. Because what I often see now when I'm working with clients who have reactive dogs, and maybe it's their first dog or their first reactive dog, you as the owner, if you love your dog, and we all love our dogs, it's so easy to get nervous yourself and to spiral out of control yourself. And then you can't be the person your dog needs you to be. You need to
Right.
be that, yeah.
And some of us get triggered by that, get activated by our dog's activation, right, of their nervous system. So, some of us that are went to hypervigilance anyway, and then
Yeah.
now there's two of you. So that also.
Yeah. And then you have that. And I mean, some dogs don't care, but some dogs really pick up on that. And you have that snowball effect of things just going wrong. So I'm curious, how have you, when you had your first dogs and really identified with them and wanted to help them, how did you handle that? What strategies did you use for yourself to keep yourself calm in situation where they needed you to be calm?
I'll think about that, but I wanted to go back to what you were saying, because I've had a lot of days like that where I did the same thing, and I think that's good training, no matter what species we're talking about. Just do the next thing, like I feel overwhelmed pretty easily, and like sensory overload if I was on a subway or something like that, forget it. But I can just focus on like we're getting to this next point.
Yeah.
I used to really panic when I first started getting asked to like travel and teach abroad and stuff. I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this, but I can do it. And like now airport is fine, but I started out at the airport. I picked what my targets would be ahead of time. Like, I'm going to take a walk where I find all the ladies' restrooms now. I'm going to take a walk where I find the coffee place. So I had like specific targets to look for, and then I could pass the other stuff while looking for that thing. Um,
Yes.
and so you break when you have to move through a space and the space is overwhelming, you can break it down in these pieces, and then the more you practice it, the less breaking down you have to do. So at this point, like, any of us going to the airport and getting to our terminal and getting to like where our flight is waiting to take off, that's target training. We're doing that anyway, you know?
Yes.
So I've done a lot of that. And like also when I started going to like dog competitive dog sports shows and stuff like that, I was just in a panic. I wouldn't eat the day before, I wouldn't sleep. And again, it's just like break down those things and do the next thing that you can do.
Yeah, it's about the next thing. That really hits the point very well. Because the next thing, that's not such a big thing. It never is if you split it down well enough. And yeah, and the more practice you get, the maybe the larger the steps between the things can get. Yeah,
Exactly.
but
Exactly.
I'm curious now. Like, so you had a panic about flying to a conference or going to a dog sports competition. Why
Yeah.
would you? Why? What convinced you to do it anyways, rather than just to opt out of it altogether?
Well, the conference stuff, I wasn't flying to go to those until people started asking me to speak at them. Like once the books came out and people started asking me to do this stuff, and I didn't realize any of that would happen. Like I didn't know
Yeah.
what was going to happen. And I don't like to say no to people. And I was grateful that people wanted to hear from me. So, like, that stuff was struggling with the not wanting to go anywhere stuff. And in the beginning, I did end up saying no a lot. Like, I had certain criteria, like, well, this is going to be too far. This is going to be this is going to be that. And I took the smaller, less distance ones, or the ones where I had a friend there, or, like, yeah, like the more I got used to it, the less criteria I needed to put on it, you know?
Nice. Yeah.
Um, but I mean, traveling is crazy, and it was crazy before the pandemic, but it's even more crazy now.
Like I remember when so I really wanted to get my COVID vaccine, and I at that point I didn't qualify because I'm a foreigner in Mexico. I didn't qualify for it. So because they only gave it to permanent residents and to Mexicans.
Oh.
Um, so I ended up thinking, okay, I'm gonna fly to Houston to get it because in
That's
the
where
U.S.
I'm from. I grew up there, just
Oh,
as
really?
an
I didn't
aside,
realize that.
to this conversation. Yes.
Because there's a direct
So
like
close.
3 or 4 hour flight to Houston, and at that point you could just walk into a pharmacy in the US and select whatever vaccine you wanted from their menu.
Right.
But I was like, it feels so socially irresponsible to be flying in the first place
Oh,
during the pandemic. And
right.
it wasn't even about me at that point. My grandmother, who has since passed away, but at that point she was in a, what do you call it, in a care facility,
Right, right.
mentally still all there, but physically she died when she was 100, so she just
Wow.
could hardly walk anymore. and and she used to be my favorite person in my family, so I was always thinking I wanted to act in the way I wished the people who were taking care of her were acting in their lives, and I wouldn't have wanted them to take a flight
Right.
before being even vaccinated. So that was super stressful. And then I remember going back. At least there was like a mask law on the plane at that point. But coming back, there was this woman sitting right next to me, and it was a packed flight. And her mask was like below her mouth.
God.
And I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
And you're stuck next to her for 3 hours.
I'm stuck next to her. I'm wearing my KN95 mask, but who
Right.
knows if that's a real KN95 mask or a fake.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And then she started coughing, and I'm like,
Oh my
oh
God.
my God, what are you
Oh
doing?
no.
I'm like, I actually ended up asking her to please put her mask back on.
Good for you.
Yeah, I mean, because it really, like, it made me so uncomfortable. And otherwise, like in a different situation, I would have moved, but you can't do that on a plane.
Right. You're
Yeah,
stuck.
yeah,
I mean, it's one of the reasons planes are like panic inducing. Like, once you're on that plane, like
yeah.
you're in the air, cramped next to other people, like you can't make your own choices about your health, for example.
Yeah,
Um, you can't, you're just kind of stuck. Yeah.
yeah. Being vaccinated, and with everyone being vaccinated now, I mean, I do feel much more relaxed about that. But
Yeah.
sometimes these things do come up and you don't expect them. and they sneak up on you and you can't get out of the situation. And one thing that in that situation also really helps me is focusing on my breathing.
Exactly. I was just thinking about that when I was thinking about being trapped on a plane seat, because that's what, of course, I do a lot of that.
Yeah. And I just realized it's so funny because the first time I taught take a breath to a dog was for the instructor certification.
Oh,
Like all the other things I had taught before, but that one, it always felt like, I mean, that's kind of neat, but I don't know.
yeah, that's the common reaction to that. So that
Yes. And
yeah.
it's funny that I never made that connection because I have already been using it myself. And I do something really simple. I do 1, 2, 3, breathe in, 4, 5, 6, 7, breathe
There you
out.
go.
And I just keep doing that and focus on it, and it helps me so much. And then
Exactly.
for the instructor certification, I taught it to Game for the first time. And Game feels like she doesn't go into a panic, but she doesn't like fireworks. And Mexico is a very loud place. So
Got it.
sometimes someone will set up, you don't know in advance.
I see.
And then you suddenly have like half a day of fireworks. So, and she'll be fine with the first 3 or 4. But you can see her level of arousal going up, and then she'll get more and more uncomfortable. And then I used take a breath, and she was able to breathe through the fireworks.
Nice.
And that was my holy shit.
Yeah.
This behavior is so important. This is
Yeah.
amazing moment.
Yeah.
And I've taught it to other dogs since then, and it hasn't even been a long time. But I'm like, so that was my conversion moment.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. What you described is exactly what happens. The people are like, I mean, that's interesting. And then they don't really, and then at some point they try it and they're like, oh my God. So that came from my mentor who was she was the head of the veterinary behavior clinic at University of Pennsylvania for a while.
Karen Overall, yeah.
Yeah, Karen. And that came from her concept of like of biofeedback. And she made that protocol and it has informed like everything that I do and I always teach it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a big thing. And you know, her target audience was vet students that were learning this from her and patients coming to the clinic that had like aggressive companion dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So I really put it out to the sports world that, hey, our dogs could use this. we can all use it. And I can't even tell you how many people have told me like that they started to calm down because you can do it too. And then
Yeah.
you're cueing off each other's breathing.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
exactly. I've actually told people that as well. So people who are struggling with a dog, when the dog gets over aroused, they start feeling panicky. So I've told them to focus on their own breathing, to get
right.
themselves back into a better place. It's so simple and so effective. Like, I mean, I find it hard to believe that simple things can make such a big difference, really.
And it's like the simplest things make the
Yeah.
biggest difference. It's pretty interesting. But like if you have a baby and they're crying and you're holding them, you can kind of like feel how fast they're breathing or feel their heartbeat, and then you can help them, like you can co-regulate,
Oh,
right?
really?
Yeah, and or if you're on a horse, like I used to be really anxious riding, and the horse feels that. So it's like, you know, there's two individual creatures, but within that field, there's tons of opportunity to co-regulate, communicate, calm each other down, model calm. Modeling calm is a big one for me. I'm like teaching myself how to do it while I'm doing it for somebody
Yeah.
else. These things happen. So let's tell more people that they have
Yeah.
this gift. Dog training, there's so much empathy and communication and cooperation and all these pieces. if you're just focused on, okay, so because I told you so, and here's a cookie. There's like this whole cool world also happening.
Yeah. I mean, and we're all mammals.
Right.
Like, even when I'm like, when there's a friend who's having a bad time, I'm like consciously breathing,
Right.
because it feels like, well, I want them to know that one of us is calm, right? Now it's my time to be calm. Next time it's
Right.
going to be your time to be calm, and I'm going to be like all
Right.
over the place.
We model that for others
Yeah.
without thinking about it as part of empathy and compassion. We just start modeling that, and animals feel that too. You can model it for your dog. You can tell them that things are okay and to keep taking deep breaths.
Yeah.
So why not?
It makes perfect physiological sense too, because I think when we're anxious or going into a panic, we tend to breathe really
Right.
shallowly. And then you don't get the CO2 out of your lungs, and you don't get a lot of oxygen into your lungs. So you really want to get all that CO2 out and then the oxygen in. I don't have a medical background, but I'm assuming
Sounds
that
good to
means
me. Sounds
there
good
will
to me.
be more oxygen in your blood, which will help your brain stay in a functioning state of mind rather than just falling out of your ears, right?
Falling out of your ears. Yeah, it's been a big help to me to have this mental image of my own brain as like a puppy whose behavior I can shape in the ways that we're talking about. Growing up, I was blamed kind of for how I was wired. People didn't really know, so they would assume like things were choices that weren't, and
Mm-hmm.
like my ADHD and different things. So it's like you internalize that, and then you're like, oh, why am I feeling like this or doing this? Someone else over there isn't doing those things, and why can't I be da 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 da? So if you love puppies and you like and you think of your brain as one, then you can have a dialogue with yourself.
No, I really like that. I really like that. I haven't thought of my brain as a puppy, I think I may like your metaphor even better. I taught myself consciously to talk to myself the way I would talk to a good friend who I love.
I do that.
But the puppy metaphor also perfectly works.
Yeah,
And maybe everyone needs a different image, but just treat yourself with the same kindness you would treat someone else you love with, right?
exactly.
Because if you beat yourself up, of course you're going to feel worse rather than better. And you're already feeling bad. So that's just not fair to yourself.
Right. And it's like
Yeah.
old habitual thought patterns. So
Yeah.
you can start over again. If you don't have any habitual thought patterns involving your brain being a puppy, then you can start from the beginning.
Yeah. Do you know anything about transactional analysis?
I've heard that term, but I haven't really
Yeah.
read about it.
It's basically about how there are different versions of ourselves talking to each other in our brains,
Okay.
and to identify what kind of version of yourself is talking to
Oh,
you.
got it.
And so reading this really helped me split down my own inner dialogues.
Interesting.
And when I caught myself being the critical parent criticizing
Right.
myself,
Yeah.
it's like, no, stop, like consciously stop that and go into a different state, like critical parent, shut up. And then you have the other one, it's called, I think, nurturing parent,
Oh,
and talk to yourself from the nurturing parent state of mind, who's understanding, who'll support you. Like, even if you fuck up, they'll be like, it's okay, we all do it, it happens.
right.
Even if you fuck up and it's entirely your fault, they will still not blame you, because they'll
Because
be
you're a
like,
human.
you know, it happens to the best of us. Sometimes
Right.
things just go wrong, and that's
Right.
okay. You're human. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride for me to choose to have kids and raise them the way that we're talking about, just mindfully and with compassion. Before having them, I spent years working on myself because I wasn't going to repeat any, speaking of patterns, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I did that work, and now I can raise them the way that I wished I could have been raised, which has been pretty awesome.
How are you raising them, if you don't mind me asking?
Just, just mindfully, just they have a lot of agency, they have a lot of choice, they have the combination of structure and freedom so that they're safe but don't feel like someone else is making them do something or whatever, and they're
Yeah.
listened to. I see them, I see who they are as individuals instead of projecting what I wish they were like or what they should be like or comparing them to somebody else. They know that they're seen for who they are, and whatever their interests are, I encourage them to do that. Not stuff I would have ever thought of. My parents were like, "You're going to take this lesson. You're going to go here. You're going to." There was no discussion or what do you. So it's pretty funny because it's like I've got a kid that chose to become a ukulele player and another kid that chose to go to circus school and unicycles all over
Awesome.
the house. And
That's so cool. Oh yeah,
got
I've seen the picture on
weird.
Facebook.
I have so much weird stuff going on that and it like brings them so much joy. It's not anything I ever would have thought.
Yeah, no, I think that's so cool. I don't have kids myself, but I constantly think about how I would raise my hypothetical kids. And it always catches my attention when among my friends, like there are some who do the traditional thing, and then there are others who like do their own thing or try something
Yeah.
else. And
For
that
me,
always
yeah.
stands out to me. And it makes me smile when I see, for example, when I see pictures of your kids on Facebook or you write a little bit about them.
Exactly.
It makes me so happy.
Yeah. You know what? And traditional parenting wouldn't have worked for them. They would have been miserable just as I was because they don't have conventional brains. They they did not inherit that from me or their father because we don't have them either. Um, and something else is just finding those school environments that were going to work for them. I know I have the privilege to be in a place that had lots of different choices for schools and to be able to scrounge up the money from various places to be able to pay.
What kind of school are they in?
In Pennsylvania, there's a lot of Quaker run schools that are called
Mhm.
Friends schools, and they have a very intentionally nurturing, pacifist, sweet, progressive family kind of
Mhm.
feel to them. And that's been perfect for her.
Awesome. Yeah.
And my son has some language based learning differences. So he goes to a school for kids with that. The teachers there, that's their passion. That's what
Nice.
they do. They see each kid. It's just been phew. And it took a while to find those two. Thank goodness. Because
Yeah.
being an animal trainer, I mean, your kids are not that different from from any other animal, and then you have to send them to learn from someone, and you don't like the way that they're being taught is very painful.
Yeah. I'm at an Airbnb right now in an apartment, and on the first floor, there's a kindergarten. And the other day,
Oh, you were talking about that.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. But that's not actually not what I mean. I meant something else. Yeah, that also.
Oh,
But
okay.
let's not even go into
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
I can hear them, right? If they're crying or being very loud.
Yeah.
So on the other day, I think someone dropped off their kid for the first time. And
Oh,
that kid immediately started crying, and the mother went away, or the no, I
right.
should like, well, scratch that. I want to be more inclusive and not say the mother.
The
I'm
caregiver.
gonna, yeah.
Right.
And then the caregiver went away,
Mhm.
and the kid just kept crying for like 2 hours straight.
Oh my
I was
God.
like, oh my God, that poor kid. I could like, how can you? I mean, and I don't know. I have no background in how like any of that works, but it just felt like it hurt me to just hear that kid cry so much
Yeah.
and nobody coming back for them.
It's so hard, right? Because you have someone that needs help taking care of their kids so they can go to work, and
Yeah.
then you've also got the teacher that's at work trying to do their best and they have this kid and then you have the kid who's suffering. It's like, I have compassion for everyone in the situation, but my God, yeah, it's really rough.
I'm curious, with all your background knowledge, if that had happened with one of your kids, how would you have handled it?
I mean, I had the privilege of not having to drop them off. You know what I mean? So when I did, it was for something specific they were interested in, like nature camp or something like that.
Yeah.
And even so, the transition for my son was very hard. And I would kind of sit there a while, and different kids respond to different things. So, like, he, at the time, he's got a lot of sort of sensory defensiveness, but at the time, he liked being picked up. So, the teacher would pick him up and kind of, they'd walk around with me, but she would have him. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And just keep trying to engage them in other stuff. And it's very hard. I mean, if someone's in a hurry and they've got to drop their kid off at a place that's more like institutionalized, and like, this starts at 8, you got to get the kid in there, you got to do this, that person's got to leave. The best thing would be a mix of comforting, if that kid can be comforted, and distraction.
Yeah.
It's really difficult. My son, he had a lot of occupational and physical therapy when he was a baby, and I didn't always agree with the way that the therapists were approaching things. I was in this place where I'm not an occupational or physical therapist. I didn't understand what, my son's sensory processing disorder, this label or that label. And I was trying to put together a team for him.
Yeah.
But I am a teacher, and it's like, a couple of the therapists were terrible. They were focused a lot like traditional dog training used to be, where it's like, I want you to do this, I'm going to put you in the position and make you do it. And they were like, this kid's body doesn't bend like this. Normal kids' bodies bend like this. I'm going to bend this kid's body. And then he'd cry. I had one therapist tell me, like, don't hug him when he's crying. You're making it worse. So I had to fire that therapist. She was sent by like the early intervention program through the county. I told them I wouldn't send my puppy to be trained by somebody that was acting this way. So I can't have my baby in there. So yeah, I spent a lot of time finding people that had the functional knowledge that he needed, plus could teach in small increments and set him up for
Yeah.
success, build a relationship where he trusted them and grew confident and wanted to do these things and all that. And I did find those teachers, but they weren't the first few, and it was very difficult.
Wow. So would you say, in your experience, are there still a lot of parallels between traditional dog training and the way children are being educated? Is that the norm?
Unless you're lucky, I think so.
Yeah.
Looking at institutions, if your kid is going to be in an institutional type situation, they need to act a certain way, be a certain way. And if they're not, then, like, whatever, it's uncomfortable. It's not nice. I mean, kids are still getting punished.
Yeah.
Like, the other therapist that really made me feel crazy was an ABA, Applied Behavior Analyst graduate student, and she accompanied my kid to preschool to help him with like social skills.
Mm-hmm.
He was having problems like fidgeting when he was supposed to be still and stuff like that. And there's like a million things you could do to help a kid that's fidgeting when they're supposed to be still, including, because he had like low muscle tone and low like upper body strength, changing the chair that he was in.
Very simple, you think? Yeah.
But he really liked this vest from one of his favorite TV shows that he had with the characters on it.
Mm-hmm.
He's so excited to wear it to school and show the other kids. And then I found out that she took it, like, to punish him for fidgeting.
Oh.
And I was like, I'm not paying for this. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
So, this is still happening
Man.
in terms of like old school dog training. Just that idea that, like, someone is doing something that I don't like, I need to stop it, versus someone's doing something that I don't like. What's the function behind it? What in the environment is contributing to it? What might they do instead that could be more functional? If you're in a hurry, if you're by a clock, like the people from the county versus private therapists, they came in and they were like, by a clock, they had to turn in a report. They had like a bunch of other stuff they needed to do, not just sit and work with the kid. So like everyone's doing their job.
Yeah.
And it's just really hard.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have empathy for everyone is trying to get their shit done.
Yeah.
But when
No,
it's
of course.
when it's your baby, I mean, I'm trying to get my shit done too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot to think about for me too. Like, for example, now that I'm thinking back to that kid who was dropped off for the first time and crying for 2 hours straight until probably they got exhausted and stopped crying because they couldn't anymore, right?
It's flooding. It will be flooding
Yeah.
there. Right.
And at some point you're all spent. I guess we can't blame anyone for that. I don't know any of these people, right? So maybe the caregiver just has to go to work because otherwise none of them will eat that evening.
Exactly.
It really is a luxury to be able to pick and choose
Oh yeah.
where and how you have your kids taken care of.
I didn't have mine till I was 40, and I
Yeah.
knew I was going to have the conditions needed to parent in the way that I wanted to, or I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah. Yeah. Then you had two at once.
And then went and had two at once. Most people are not doing that, So they're just having their family and then trying to make it work. Yeah, it's really rough.
And I mean, I'm also assuming that for many kids, those methods work just fine. I don't know, but maybe most kids stop crying after 5 minutes. And I mean, there is definitely a qualitative difference between crying for 5 minutes and crying for 2 hours.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
because the 5 minute kid gets distracted, moves on with their day, and the next time they have a good time, and the next time they get dropped off, they don't cry at all. Like, whatever. Okay, that's fine with me,
Yeah.
That's okay. But the 2 hours, that has a
2 hours.
very different flavor to it.
It does. And I mean, that kid, maybe they're going to end up crying for a less amount each time. I mean, that would be your hope. But
Yeah.
if they have some kind of special needs that aren't being met in some way, yeah, I mean, that's really hard. So hard.
Yeah.
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 I
Yeah.
don't
I
know.
guess the hope is that if you have kids and you're in a situation where you don't get to like really pick and choose and set them up for success, then the hope is you have a kid who can handle whatever institution you have access to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Because most people have a limited access to, there's not always that many options.
Yeah. I mean, for example, the town
Yeah.
I'm in now, there's this one kindergarten, right? There's no other one. So
Right.
there's
You
no
go.
other option. If you don't have family or the option to travel or
Right.
go somewhere else or homeschool, that's it. That's just it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
This conversation I keep thinking about Temple Grandin, her childhood, and what she writes about in terms of growing up, whenever that was, I guess in the 50s in America, growing up as a person with autism and people not knowing what that is, and just her journey through self advocacy through like all the different schools and teachers and everything that she went through.
I mean, then it's so impressive sometimes. Like, if people, like, even though they were not set up for success from the beginning, sometimes people still end up being hugely successful because they discover their own path.
Right.
But for everyone who does, how many are there who don't?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was just thinking about, actually.
Because you can tell those hero stories as in, oh yeah, you overcame this kind of adversity and that kind of adversity, but I'm sure that's the exception.
Yeah, that's why we talk about it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wonder, like, my son in different family or with different resources or different school, it would be such a fucking nightmare. It's hard enough as it is with everything.
Yeah.
So
he'll grow up and make his way. That's a given because he has advocates in his corner. He has support. He has agency in his life. And
unique ways of looking at the world and interacting with it.
Yeah. If you have a unique way of looking at the world and interacting with it and the right kind of support system around you, that's going to end up being an advantage because it's going to set you apart from the crowd.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that support system, it's a disadvantage.
Exactly. School was always just terrible for me, and having kids knowing like I need to find the right schools for whoever they're going to be. And I mean, that changes, but my God, I put so much time into it because school was just like escape. It was just like survive this and escape. This institution was not meant for you. It wasn't created with you in mind. and you're going to be unhappy till you get out. It's
Yeah.
like, 12 years of negative reinforcement to get out.
Yeah. I learned in school that if I ever had the hypothetical kids I'm not planning on having, they will definitely not go to a traditional school.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. For example, grades. I'm
Kids
completely
don't have,
against them.
yeah,
I
they
hate
don't have
them.
grades. Like,
Yeah.
don't have grades.
Because it puts so much pressure on me. Probably most people would either just not have felt the pressure
Right.
or have been fine with it, but I'm not. And that's why still, for example, I love training my dogs, but I don't compete because I don't want that pressure. I just don't. And I can opt out of it.
Changes things. It
Yeah.
changes things. Because once you start competing, even if you're like not caring about beating somebody else, you still wanted to get a title. You become attached to things rather than just enjoying training. And it
Yeah.
really does change things.
Yeah. And I do think that my reluctance to compete, even if I train to a high level, I do
Right.
think that was created in my school days. And I
Right.
was good in school. Like I was constantly succeeding and a straight A student, but it was extremely stressful because
Exactly.
I cared so much, because I was made to care. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. And I don't even think that I was that neurodivergent. It was just not right for me. And I think it's not right for many people. Part of the reason I'll definitely never have kids, or only like once I'm old and rich, I might adopt when I can pay for whatever fancy non-traditional school I want to
Right.
get
Exactly.
them in.
Exactly.
Because usually those schools that are non-traditional, they're expensive.
So expensive. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I mean, that's where all my money goes.
Yeah.
It goes to school. It goes to paying for school.
Yeah. Something else I was thinking about earlier before our conversation was that I was pretty happy as a kid, but I was a rebellious teenager.
Mhm.
And my parents, with I'm sure the very best of intentions, kept me on a very short leash as a teenager, because they didn't, it's like you have this reactive dog and you don't want them to get run over by a car. So you keep their
Right.
leash very short.
Right.
But the dog has this desire to run.
Right.
And the short leash is continually frustrating them. And
Exactly.
that's how I felt like I was the reactive dog equivalent of a teenager.
Right.
I had a lot of freedom as a kid, and I was a happy kid. I had space, I had time, I could run around, I could climb trees, I could try out things, but I became difficult when I turned into a teenager, and my parents did the best they could with that. But I think many of the behaviors I displayed, I may not have displayed if they had found a way to give me freedom within a safe structure. But I mean, I don't even know what that would look like, because it's hard, right?
Right.
What I did end up doing is waiting till they were asleep and climbing out the window and stuff like that. There must be other ways, right?
Yeah,
Like I know they were trying to keep me safe, but by
right.
trying to keep me safe with the short leash,
Right.
I actually ended up doing more dangerous things due to that short leash that
Yeah.
was meant to keep me safe, because I always found ways around the short leash.
Right. Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They were training you to be sneakier.
Yeah, they were. That got reinforced because it felt good. Then I would get out and I would like the dog who jumps the fence. Because you don't have that amount of freedom that you require, or that I required, and I think I require a much larger amount of freedom than the average person. I would go out and I would go crazy, and I would go on these drinking sprees and whatever. I definitely see parallels when I work with students who are trying so hard to keep their dogs safe because they love their dogs, and they worry
Right.
that if they give them a little bit of freedom, they will lose their dog, or something bad will happen to the dog. At the same time, I can see that the dog is just not having their needs met.
Right.
There's
Right.
so many parallels.
I'm thinking about like one of the schools that I visited for the kids. The teacher said, and I guess it was a kindergarten teacher, said, so the first day of school, the kids and I have a meeting and we discuss what they want the rules of the classroom to be for that year.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
And then, the kids often have like common things about like They want people to share and not fight and just stuff like that. And then she writes them all down in note cards and they put them on the wall. All the schools I visited were like intentional communities. So like the school had some kind of philosophy about how things worked there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I forget what it was, but the teacher could always take the general themes the kids had put down on their note cards and tie it
Mm-hmm.
into what the philosophy was in terms of how
Ah,
to treat each other and stuff. It was all there, you
yeah,
know? So, anyway, just that idea of let's figure this out together. What do you want from kindergarten this year?
yeah,
And what kind of environment will help you with that?
yeah.
You know?
That would have been, I mean, that would be so nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
If that
right?
were the norm. Yeah. Yeah, I remember I watched this documentary about a democratic school, I think in England. I think it was called Somerville. Is that a thing?
Oh, I don't know.
But I'm like, yeah, where the students have as much of a say in how they want their community to function as the teachers. And not only do they get to choose their classes, but also, yeah, like what do they want to learn when? And
Right.
like that's,
And you get really enthusiastic learners because
yeah,
they're getting to follow what they're interested in, and then that opens up more pathways to learning about other stuff they might be interested in. It's just like when we're training, we want to build that enthusiasm in our learners, no matter what species they are, so that they
yeah.
want to keep doing stuff.
Yeah.
And
And the other thing is the longer I work with people and dogs, the more I recognize that really everyone is an individual and you really need to tailor your teaching
yeah,
style to
that's
the
right.
team in front of you. And if that dog came in with a different person, I might take a different approach. Or with
Yeah,
that, if that person came in with a different dog as well.
that's what makes our job complex because
Yeah.
we don't just have one entity that we are teaching. We have to make it work with a few different things going on.
And the
So,
same for human relationships,
right,
right? Like with every human being you meet, the relationship will end up looking differently.
right, because everyone has their own stuff they're bringing to the table. Yep.
And maybe that's a good note to end on that I will ask you in a second. What I'm learning with every year that passes is what kind of people I want to be surrounded by. I get clearer and clearer on that. And then I also learn to say no if someone doesn't fit that picture. While in the past, I would have tried to make myself fit into their
Yeah,
lives.
that's how I was
Now,
taught.
now I'm like, I mean, you seem like a. I was actually, I was, well, I went on one date with a person who seemed like a very interesting person, but it turned out so that first date we went on, the last second they changed time and place on me. And I was like, okay, whatever, sure, I can do that, right? And then the second date we were supposed to go on, they forgot. In the past, because they are an interesting person, they have a really interesting job that they're passionate about, things that I value in people. And that's a person I think would be interesting to get to know better.
Right,
But to me, punctuality and respecting my time is extremely important. And I'm also really respectful of other people's time, or I'm trying to be. At this point, that's a deal breaker for me.
mm,
And I explained that to them. I said, look, we were going to meet today and you forgot. This happening twice in a row. Long term, this would not work for me because my time is my most important and limited resource. And it feels like you're not respecting it if you're forgetting about it. So
right.
I would like to see you again, but I just want you to know this is really important to me. So do you think you can make sure that you don't change things around last second, or that you do remember the next time? So if that's an exception and it happens once or twice a year, no problem, right? We are all human, but this is just something really important to me. And they said, now that I'm thinking about it, it makes me sad, but I understand what you're saying. But my priority right now is my job. And if the job requires me, for example, to do something when I already have a plan with you, I will cancel the plan with you. And so we thanked each other for each other's honesty. And And it was all very like, it felt so good to have that honest conversation. And I ended up saying, if your priorities ever change, maybe I'm still around and emotionally available, just get in touch. And otherwise, I wish you all the best. I understand that you're prioritizing a job right now. I've been at that point too. It's just that currently our work-life balances are not compatible. And I'm so proud of myself for being able to recognize that and say that these days.
Yeah.
If I kept seeing that person and I actually fell in love with that person, my life would be stressful. People not being reliable is an extreme stressor for me. So now I just know how to set my environment up in order to just not have to deal with certain stressors that are not necessary. I'm next to Mexico City, which is like one of the biggest cities in the world. There are plenty more fish in the sea, and some of them will be reliable.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really like how you're describing that in terms of like setting up the conditions that are going to
Yeah.
work for you. Other people would call it self advocacy, but it's like behavior nerd people. I see it, that making a functional environment. How's it,
Yeah.
yeah, I like it a lot.
Just being involved in both dog training and keeping expanding the Control Unleashed philosophy and raising human kids. How has that changed you over the last years, or over the last 10 years, let's say? I think that's the age of your kids.
I mean, I've definitely grown up a lot. I feel like I was a kid when I started this. I've worked on myself for so many years and just kind of matured and grown into what I needed to be able to do to have the life that I wanted. It took a lot of time, you know?
Do you have the life that you want now?
Yeah, yeah. But
Nice.
growing up, I didn't know that ever be able to achieve anything, basically. It was like, you're smart, but you're not doing what we want or learning how we want or thinking how we want. Yeah. So, it was hard.
Yeah. Why did you think you made it anyways? Because now everyone wants to hear from you. Everyone wants you to speak at their conferences. You're highly
I
successful.
didn't know any of that was going to happen, and it wasn't a plan. Before I started getting asked to like speak all these places and travel, I didn't even know like really that anybody did that. Like it's a whole like, lifestyle thing. I had very strong opinions about what I was doing and what I was saying and what I would want to change, and I said them out loud, and they worked for people. I didn't know any of it would happen. In fact, when the first book came out, all of a sudden it was really popular and all that stuff. I was crying. I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, I don't know what this is. I'm very overwhelmed. I don't know what this means or what I have to do. And then right away, people were like, now for your second book, you have to this. And now you're going to be doing that. And I was like, what? I didn't, assuming that everyone's on a track where they put something out there and that means they have to keep putting things out there and they have to do this and then they have to, and I was like, I don't, what, you know and it's been weird because there has been pressure about that, and then just my own internalized pressure now of people want something new.
Yeah. So do you feel you're on that track now
And
where you have to keep putting things out there?
I fight that track unless I have something that's important to me to put out there. I don't like repeating myself. And I feel like one of the reasons that people like me, if they like me, is because I am pretty authentic. And if I write something, it's because I really wanted to write about that thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to just keep like churning it out.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm curious. I am actively avoiding that kind of track.
Hmm.
Who is enforcing or trying to enforce that track? Is it the publishers?
Um, I mean, I love my publisher. In the beginning, it was like, now you can make a workbook. Now you can do another thing. And I was like, wait, what? I haven't thought about this yet. But I think now it's more like an internal, like, I see what other people are doing, and I'm like, my life is pretty expensive. I need to come up with something so I can advertise it here. And then I'm like, oh, I don't like doing that. And or also like during the pandemic, everything went online, and I really had to become much more computer savvy than I ever planned on being. It's actually taken like a great emotional, energetic toll on me to be teaching so many webinars online and recording things and doing all this stuff. I don't advertise and put myself out there, but I'm lucky because people will keep asking me to talk about a certain thing or whatever. And so usually I will.
Yeah.
That kind of keeps me out there. But yeah, it was all a surprise to me.
I'm assuming that your first book was just something that resonated with a lot more people than you expected. And then things just went from there.
Yeah, I mean, I just didn't know, but people weren't talking about the very specific thing yet that I put out there in terms of working with dogs that don't necessarily fit the mold,
Mm-hmm.
working with anxiety and different things like that. Yeah, I mean, I kind of put it out there, and particularly for like performance people, because I understood the different contexts that they were,
Yeah.
class and trials and life and the social life of clubs, the dynamics of those things. Like I understand all those things and the pressure people put themselves under, and there's a lot of wacky stuff. And I understood all that and was like, this is how you can make this work. It did speak to a lot of people for sure.
Yeah. I think part of what makes Control Unleashed popular is that it is relevant not only for certain dogs, but also for many people.
Right.
Yeah.
I have gotten a lot of messages, particularly. I decided my third book, which is like my most recent book, that I was just gonna like just lay it out there. I talk about a lot of personal stuff, and I've had a number of people message me or contact me and be like, I'm sitting in my therapist's office crying because I read what you just said, and or whatever, like stuff like that.
Yeah, I totally understand. I love the picture of I think it's a pillow that says,
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
can't make your own neurotransmitters store bought, it's just fine.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about this stuff. Let's compassionately listen to each other, just destigmatize stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, let's just talk about everything and be open and honest with each other. I do feel like there are a few people, let's say in the dog training world, but I think in general, who dare to do that. And they are usually successful. But it
People
takes
want
a
to know.
lot.
They're
You need to
human
be
too.
really brave to do that, because the traditional school system doesn't teach us to be honest about all that shit.
Right.
It teaches us to try and make ourselves look a certain way. But really, though, like the people who do that, to me personally, are much less interesting than the people who I feel are just being authentic. And being authentic means you change and grow until the day you die. And you're not afraid of saying that, oh, like I used to believe this, but then I learned this, and now I changed my approach to this, for example.
Right. Because you
Yeah.
need to be flexible too. Like there's new like research and sciencey things coming out that we didn't have before. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It all makes sense. And
Yeah. Well, if there was someone listening who was struggling with anxiety around their anxious dog, or around their own life, or around the track they're on and expected to follow, which may not be their best
right.
life, what would you advise them to do if there was one small thing to help them feel or cope a little better or change?
Well, I'll just say the first thing that came to my mind, which is I would refer them to the works of Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche, and I'll spell that. But
Mm-hmm.
I was fortunate enough to be able to go on meditation retreats with him in person, but he's written books, he's traveled all over the world. I mean, definitely like learning meditation. You don't have to put Buddhism into your meditation, but he's the person that like just being sitting in a room with him is just like life changing because of just who he is. So anyway, I probably would recommend his books as a place to start,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that you're not alone. So like the word sangha, it's like your chosen community, like an intentional community of people that are like-minded and have similar goals, and then everyone supports each other. In terms of Buddhism, it's like your meditation group, or Dharma study group. It's your Sangha, and that's where I've made my closest friends over the past like 12 or 13 years. It's like if you're out there and you have these certain things, there's so many other people out there with those same certain things. We're all in a Sangha for people with those things trying to make it work. You're not alone. And here's things that have been helpful for others that see you, that have been there. And we'll all try it together. So I guess that's the message that I'd want to say. And I'd put him out there just because that helped me a lot. His way of meditating. He has a video on YouTube about meditating for people with panic attacks because he used to have them, even though he's a Tibetan monk from Tibet. It's pretty funny hearing him describe them.
You'll have to send me the link.
Yeah. I don't always talk about my meditation practice because some people feel like they've got all this stuff going on, and then someone's like, well, you should just meditate. And I mean, look, I've been in therapy forever. I take medication and I do this. So I'm not saying like, just try some yoga. Like, but this is a huge part of how I've done things for myself. And it certainly has informed how I see my job in terms of what I'm doing with dogs. It's relevant.
Yeah.
And in terms of learning about biofeedback training for animals and all that kinds of stuff, and in terms of my thinking about my brain as a reactive puppy and all that, it all just makes perfect sense for me.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yes, please send me the YouTube link you mentioned, and also what book, maybe one book that you would recommend by him to get started. Yeah. I think there are many puzzle pieces that go into building a life for ourselves that feels satisfying most of the time. In the end, that's what we all want. And the individual pieces are a little bit different for everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah. For me, like I was just thinking when you said that was one of the things you do, and something else is you take medication. For me, I don't meditate, but I'm like a dog who needs off leash time. I need to walk between 1 and 3 hours every day. If I let that go for more than 3 days, I'm starting to be miserable. That is one of my puzzle pieces, and I see it as kind of as my meditation puzzle piece. I tried when Ingrid, who is in charge of FDSA's social media, asked as instructors to be more active in social media. And she was like, well, just take your phone and post the things that you see on your hikes. I already thought I wouldn't like that, but I wanted to give it a try because I don't think it's okay to judge things before giving them a try. But I ended up being right, and I don't do it anymore because I usually don't bring my phone unless I specifically want to video something or take a picture of something, because I don't want to be constantly online. I want that to be my offline time.
Exactly.
And I don't want to get sucked into that, like constantly interrupting my hike by taking pictures or short videos of the beautiful things I see. Yes, maybe I'm sharing them with someone else and that other person maybe gets something out of it. I don't know. But it takes too much away from me. Like the hike doesn't fulfill the function I need it to have for me anymore.
Exactly.
I need that to be offline time.
Right.
And I need it to be in a green environment. And ideally, I won't meet another person. It'll just be me and my dog, ideally. And ideally, my dog will be off leash because leash walks make me miserable.
Yeah.
Not because I think all dogs need to be off leash, but I need to be off leash.
Right.
But everyone is different, right? And another puzzle piece of mine is I also take medication. And another puzzle piece of mine is I have built a life where I don't have to work 9 to 5 every day.
Oh, yeah, that
because that's just not, it doesn't fit for me.
I wouldn't have survived it.
Yeah. That's another equally important puzzle piece. There is never just only one thing. It's not, oh, just meditate, or oh, just do yoga, or oh, just take medication, or oh, just go running.
Find your puzzle pieces. And the thing is, like, hiking and walking, training dogs, any activity that you are doing can also count, quote unquote, as your meditation. All you have to do is just be aware that you're doing it.
Yeah. For me, when I'm in nature,
Right.
especially the longer I am there,
Yeah.
I'm like in the present moment. I'm fully there, and I'm not fully there in other parts of my life. But I need that fully there. And I can't have a phone with me in order to do that, for
Yeah.
example.
No, and it puts pressure on you. Like that's
Yeah.
that's your time. You can't be like trying to monetize your time or
Yeah.
whatever. I'm the same way. I start to freak out if I haven't gotten to take like a good hike for a few days. I
Yeah.
can't. I need it, you know? And I get most of my best ideas when I'm hiking because I'm not with all the other crap in my head.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And it's like you need that. Some people need that time, that outside time.
Yeah. It's so interesting to me because some people go to the gym.
Right.
And I've tried that once, but that just doesn't work for me. Like, for example, running on a treadmill,
Yeah.
like that is not it. Like that's so it's not just a physical exercise, it's a specific kind of physical exercise.
Yeah.
And I think it can be so different for everyone. We should be skeptical of people who claim to have the one
The
solution.
answer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the interesting thing with being a dog trainer and with Control Unleashed. I've got patterns, they're going to work, but everybody's going to figure out their own way. And I always talk about it's not the specific thing I tell you to do in the pattern, but the fact that it is a pattern, and both you and the learner recognize that's what's happening that's important so that you can make up your own. There's kind of a structure you can put on things that help, but then everyone has all their own other puzzle pieces, whether
Yeah.
it's medication, enrichment, whatever trauma or whatever they've been carrying around, and the different external and internal conditions they need. And then here's the pattern, you know?
Yeah. I love about the patterns that you can plug everything into them.
Right.
The patterns can stay the same, but whatever you need to plug into them will be
That's
different.
what changes. Yeah.
Yeah. That's like their universal applicability. Wait, what's that?
Ability.
Applicability. That's it. The universal applicability makes it so cool because you can plug in anything
Right.
that your dog or you have big feelings about. Just like the laws of learning, positive reinforcement, positive punishment,
Right.
negative punishment, they're all classical conditioning. All
Except
these things, they are true for all of us, just like gravity. But in what contexts they come into play, or what we perceive as reinforcing or punishing, is different for everyone.
exactly.
Yeah. One thing that I really liked about the instructor certification is that you didn't just want us to replicate something. You wanted to see that we could adapt to the dog we were working with. And I think that's so important. And I really like that you stressed that also.
Good.
Yeah.
Great. I'll keep stressing that. It's really important to me because, I mean, the patterns themselves are so simple. Anybody can show me that they did that, but it's like, and now what? Now that you have the mechanical skills to teach a simple thing, and now how are you going to use this?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you have all these Lego pieces, but you can build all kinds of different things with them.
Exactly. As I look around my living room and there's like Legos everywhere, I'm like, yes, correct.
I miss having Legos. I should get some. Oh, another one of my personal puzzle pieces is puzzles. I need to sleep for a certain amount of time or I won't function. I need a lot of sleep. And in order to go from my busy day or from working with students to the bedroom and to bed, my transitional ritual is working on 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 piece puzzle for like a little bit. It is a pattern, like it's like finding visual patterns.
Right.
It is not exhausting, but my brain can't do anything else. It needs to focus on that pattern. And that's after doing that, then I can go to bed and fall asleep.
It's so interesting. It's like your nose work.
Yeah, it totally, yes, it totally is.
That's so funny because puzzles like that, I have a lot of friends that like them the way that you do. There's a certain kind of mind I think
Yeah.
with, but I feel like a lot of stress if I look at them. I'm like, picture here, I can't find it. It's a million little pieces, and I'm just like, I give up.
Which just goes to show we're all different and we
Right.
just need to find what works for us.
Right. Though
Yeah.
it might be good for my brain to be like, all right, we're going to do one piece at a time, just like the way that I get through the airport or whatever, make myself deal with a giant puzzle. But even saying it, I'm like,
Well, I mean, so for you, that would probably not be a right before bed ritual. You could do it as another kind of
right,
challenge. And you
right.
could start with a very small puzzle.
Like a 3-piece
Yes.
puzzle, which I did actually, like when my kids were little, we did. But then once they got past that point, I was like, well,
No more puzzles for you.
yeah, no more puzzles in this house.
Well, I guess Legos are like puzzles, but you can do whatever you want with them because they all fit together. So maybe Legos are your puzzle.
Yeah, and you know what? You don't have to follow what the box said.
Yeah.
Something else.
Right. Yeah.
I'm creative and I'm also very oppositional. So if you tell me I have to make what's on the box, I can promise you that's not what you're going to get.
Yes, the oppositional part. Yeah, that does not seem to expand to puzzle building for me, but many other aspects of my life.
You can make your puzzle like a 3D, like you could make it into a square.
Well, I mean, with pretty every single puzzle I have built, I've lost a few pieces along the way because either I'm not sure if sometimes my dog eats them or I'm getting okay, I need to like vacuum the room now, spree around the puzzle because there's so many dog hairs everywhere.
It's funny. I want to see a puzzle of all the pieces that you've lost and then found.
Oh, that would be awesome.
It'll say a message to you like, Chrissy? Oh.
Oh God, that would be so scary.
Figured out the mystery of the puzzle pieces, Chrissy.
Like even if 2 or 3 of them just fit together perfectly from different boxes. Ooh, no. Well, let's end on that note. Dear listeners, if you like puzzles, go ahead and build puzzles. If puzzles scare you, that's okay too. Get Legos instead. Leslie, thank you so much for coming on. This was so much fun. And yeah, thank you for taking the time and also for talking humans with me.
Yes, that was fun.
Yeah.
More of that.
Yes, we all need to have more conversations about humans as well. This episode is probably only going to air in February. Do you have anything coming up in February or March that you would like to plug?
I don't really know yet. I'm talking to a few friends of mine about maybe like us getting together to do some kind of workshop that would have like both a virtual and a live component.
Cool.
It might be really fun, but I haven't set it up.
Well, I'll email you before and you can just send it to me. Listeners, look at the show notes. Whatever is about to happen will be there. And in the meantime, if someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
I am on Facebook a lot. If you want to join, I've got a public Facebook group. It's called Friends of Control Unleashed. I'm on there and I make the certified instructors go on there and interact with people. So we're on there. If you're interested in the certification program, if you're already a working dog trainer, I think the application is also in the Friends group, but you can ask there and we'll give it to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I will talk to you soon, I hope.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.